So before we start, just a quick disclaimer. This is a non-partisan video, okay? My views are not a part of this. Your views certainly can be. What we're doing is we're looking at the data and trying to extrapolate conclusions. We are not pushing an agenda. If you think I am, I'm sorry, but that's not what's going on here. I'd use a different outlet for that. So welcome along. Welcome to the second of these videos where we dissect the polling and the data in the great sport of American politics. Today I want to talk about why I think Kamala Harris is, in many ways, a pretty weak nominee for the Democratic Party going into 2024. Now, we're assuming Trump will be who she's up against in this case. The reason for that is any poll, with Trump included for the GOP in 2024, Trump wins the primaries easily, and I cannot see that going away. It's basically unforeseeable to me. I think if anything was going to dislodge the Republican Party's support for Trump, Republican voters' support for Trump, that would have happened a long time ago. It's not going to happen. He's got that party locked. That's not going to change. He's also got these states locked. I don't think there's any plausible way, with the exception of... We'll take North Carolina off that. With the exception of all these states are Trump's, okay? 195 electoral votes. These are all going to Trump. Hell or high sunshine, okay? He's not going to lose in a massive landslide no matter what happens. He's got that. That is his flaw in 2024, in my opinion. And that would be a pretty low result. And I don't think that's the result we're likely to see. And we could look at the 2020 election here with Joe Biden. And we can see, 306, 232. Now, looking at the polling for the Democrats, this is on the Way of the Burn Reddit, which I've just found. And it's a poll. It's the only place I could find the poll. It's a poll for the 2024 Democratic primary. It's from YouGov, pretty reputable in terms of polls. You've got Harris, 44%, Bernie Sanders, 10%, Buttigieg, 6%, Warren, blah, 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 blah. In short, Kamala Harris is way ahead. She's not leading by as much as the likes of Trump are in the Republican Party. However, if Biden doesn't run for re-election, and I think the data I'm about to show you may be why he may well try and run for re-election, because Kamala Harris is not popular. Harris is leading. Now, of course, Harris is not known to be a particularly smooth political operator, so she could lose it in the primaries, once we get to the debates. However, very likely Democratic voters like her. It's very likely she could be the nominee. It would make sense for the Democrats from a number of sort of conventional wisdom angles, particularly if Biden doesn't run in 2024. You've got someone who can run on sort of the record of the administration. So we can look at Kamala Harris's popularity. We can look at it down here. So this is from a Republican firm. We had some other data on Kamala Harris. Here we go. So the average approval is 41 favourable, 50% unfavourable. That's an 8-point spread. That's pretty low. That is, as of right now, that's lower than Biden. But the thing about Kamala Harris is you go back to a point basically prior to Biden's favourability really tanking. Kamala Harris was still way less popular than Joe Biden. So while certain Democratic constituencies, rank and file Democratic voters, potentially black voters and Latino voters in key states, while they may be energized by Kamala Harris's candidacy, the sort of white, wealthy swing voters that plumped for Biden over Trump, that may have been Romney voters, may have been Clinton voters in 2016, those sort of affluent country club Republican voters, they are not energized by Kamala Harris, and they switched in spite of, not because of, Kamala Harris, one way or another. So, Kamala Harris, she has the primary sewn up as of right now. This can absolutely change. More likely to change than Trump losing the primary, certainly. So what happens? Okay, she's got all these states, all right? She's not going to be a terrible nominee. She's not going to be a car crash, okay? I mean, the closest thing we've seen from a Democratic nominee to a car crash was Hillary Clinton. It can't be any worse than that campaign, right? So Kamala Harris, 223 electoral votes. I think locked. What happens? Best case scenario. Well, you've got really thin margins in key states. Best case scenario, she's less popular than Biden was at that point going into the general election. What happens? Well, first of all, Georgia flips. Just a simple case of mathematics. You see, Georgia's red. You also see, obviously, North Carolina go. And we can look at the margins in places like Arizona. That'll flip. Nevada, it's more of a question. Let's say, for the sake of argument, she hangs on to Nevada. The Rust Belt is where Trump, if Trump is, not in the middle of a pandemic where that really did drag his appeal down, you can look, the margins in places like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, very plausibly, Trump could take back the blue wall, could take back the Rust Belt. And that means it hinges on Texas. And if Kamala Harris the Democrat vote may still go up more in Texas. That is very possible. We look at Texas here, 52, 46. That could, it could improve for the Democrats. That seems to be the way the demographics are going. However, if Kamala Harris is as unpopular as she is now, not by enough. So we'll see a result like this, which is basically a turnaround of the result in 2024 and in 2020. And as of right now, I think this is what Harris-Trump 2024 looks like. I really do. I think if Trump runs sort of in an anti-mask, anti-vax sort of really crazy direction, you may see, around the edges, maybe the Rust Belt go back, okay? Maybe a couple of the Rust Belt states go back, but likely not enough. So you could see a very narrow race. I mean, the 2024 race is going to be, in my estimation, relatively narrow. I don't think we're going to see a landslide. I think a landslide is pretty unlikely. So I've revised. I think Trump's guaranteed 179. I think Harris is guaranteed 223. I don't think Georgia is guaranteed either way. Of course, right now, in terms of Senate, it's not looking great for Democrats. But we don't know what things are going to be like. One of the things here is I can only talk about this from the perspective of 2020 and 2021. We don't know what's going to happen in 2024, so we don't know how these variables will change. The map could be a Trumpian landslide or a Harris landslide by 2024, and we'll have much more indication of that by the time we get to that point. But thinking about this further, the argument I'm making is I think Biden could well run for re-election if his approval bounces back, which by all accounts it may well do. Maybe not to the level it was in the honeymoon period, but at least an improvement, because I think Harris, her ceiling is quite low. Now, there's a number of reasons for this. The first one is that the Republicans are much more, and Republican media, much more happy to attack her. They've got much more sort of red meat to the base, one reason or another. It could well be they're sort of running on this is someone who's radical left, which, if you actually look at her policies, she is basically as conservative as Joe Biden. However, that seems to be working in sort of the conservative media sphere for any number of reasons. Some people say that's because of Kamala Harris's race, and maybe that is a factor, and that's working for the Republicans to basically sort of paint an inaccurate picture of the candidate. I think that's very plausible, and I think that will work better on Harris from the Republican standpoint than it did on Biden, who the attacks on Biden were quite weary, and it's sort of very hard to get really angry about sort of an old white man. So, right, best case scenario for Harris, there is a variable we haven't taken into account. It's a variable we saw when Barack Obama won. We might see it replicated. Of course, when Clinton won, we didn't. So with Obama, there was massive surge of black support for the Democratic Party. It's the first black candidate for president, endured a lot of attacks in the media. People felt sort of a sense of solidarity there. With Clinton, this didn't happen with women voters. White women went against Clinton. She didn't particularly do better with women voters at all compared to Obama. And she was up against a candidate who was being depicted in the media as the anti-woman candidate. So if we look at this, we look at the way things are going, we can probably plausibly say it is possible that ethnic minority voters, black voters, Latino voters, maybe women voters, will feel energized by the fact you have the first black woman running for president, right? That's a new thing. And we look at the trends, particularly in places like North Carolina, right? That's pretty narrow. Could that make the difference? You could foresee, maybe that's the surprise. Maybe it flips the other way, and these two states, very heavy Latino population in Texas, leaning Democratic, unlike the Latino population in Florida, which is sort of particularly the Cuban, Venezuelan sort of parts of the Latino population are very much leaning for Trump. That's why I think Florida is, because of the sort of the radical left thing, that is staying Republican. You could see maybe North Carolina, maybe Texas at a push, but very realistically North Carolina flipping. And you could also see, because of the Latino populations in places like Arizona, you could see these states stay Democratic. You could see Georgia stay for similar reasons, and you could see the Rust Belt swing for Trump. And I think, again, you could see Kamala Harris win that way. Either way, it looks like it's going to be a close race. As of right now, if the election between Harris and Trump was held right now, I think you would probably see something along, as of right now, because again, all these factors of different constituencies of voters being jazzed up, that's not going to happen right now, okay? Maybe that will happen in 2024, maybe it won't. Maybe it'll throw up unforeseen circumstances. So, as of right now, we're probably looking at this. This is probably what you'd see. Because it's polarized, you don't really get landslides anymore. This is, in many ways, this is as close to a landslide as you get these days. It's so polarized. So we're basically seeing the reversal of the map in 2020. You're seeing that reverse, polar opposite for Trump in 2024. And I think that's very possible. I think that's very likely. I think Kamala Harris, I think Biden may well run again, because with Biden, there's more chance of hanging on to the constituency of voters he stuck together. Although it was a national emergency, it may not be replicable. We don't know. It was a very flimsy coalition, nothing like the initially strong Obama coalition. But it does look like if Kamala Harris is trusted to reinvigorate the Biden coalition, she may well stumble in 2024. Thank you for watching. My name's been Toby, and I'll be back with another one of these videos very soon. Let me know your thoughts.